Have you ever wondered? What if everything you believe about space exploration is a carefully constructed lie? What if the image of NASA you were taught in school, a symbol of advancement, truth, and achievement, is actually a smokescreen? What if the great farce of space exploration is before our eyes and no one has the courage to question it? Today, we will cross the line that separates what they show. What really happened? This isn't just another video about the Moon, Mars, or the International Space Station. This is a deep dive into the shadows of the planet's most influential space program. NASA, with billions of dollars in budget, global live broadcasts, and control of the official narrative over the universe, may be hiding something much bigger than you realize. Why do so many images of Mars look like CG? Why do Lua broadcasts have inexplicable cuts? Why did some astronauts speak out about unexplainable experiences and then were silenced? Have space missions always been real? Or are we facing a carefully produced spectacle, filmed in studios, edited, manipulated, all to control what you see and believe? Leaked documents, testimonies from former NASA employees, and live technical failures reveal cracks in a structure that has always been sold as perfect. The burning question: are we really exploring space, or just exploring our faith in truth? While millions of people watch, share, and applaud each new mission, few stop to analyze the details that don't make sense. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. Let's deconstruct what the U.S. Space Agency never expected you to question, and what you will see next could completely change your perception of the universe. Because when the lights come on, the cameras are turned off. The truth begins to emerge. Therefore, it is essential that you stay until the end of this video, because what is about to be revealed may simply not be available for long. Videos like this disappear. Information like this disappears from the internet. It's not theory, it's standard. History has shown that when someone gets too close to the truth, the curtains quickly close. And what we are going to expose here bothers a lot of people. With each detail analyzed, you will understand why it is so important to keep people informed. It's not just about being suspicious of NASA. It's about questioning, because certain information never reaches the public. It's about opening your eyes to what has been carefully omitted. Edited images, cut transmissions, censored messages, silent astronauts. This content can be a game changer. And if you value serious investigations, in-depth analysis, and the search for the truth behind the scenes of space exploration, then now is the time to act. Please like this video, not just as a gesture of support, but as a sign that you are awake. And subscribe to the channel, because the next revelation could be even more impactful. And you won't want to miss it. You've seen the surface. Now it's time to dive deeper. Because behind the shine of the stars and the rockets that soar into space, there is something much bigger. Something that is being hidden. Since the 1960s, NASA has become one of the greatest symbols of human advancement. The entire world stopped to watch the broadcasts of space missions, as if they were chapters of an epic story being written before our eyes. Man's arrival on the Moon, the first. Steps on lunar soil, the rockets cutting through the sky with surgical precision. Everything was presented as indisputable proof that we had overcome gravity, surpassed the limits of science, and conquered space. But as the decades passed, something began to bother the most attentive. And there were many who began to notice that not everything made sense. The Apollo 11 mission, for example, is still celebrated today as the greatest achievement in space exploration. But why, in the 1960s, were we able to send astronauts to the Moon and bring them back safely, even with technology infinitely inferior to what we have today? And, decades later, we are still unable to repeat the same feat frequently. Why? Did NASA never return human beings to lunar soil, even with astronomical budgets, computers, thousands of times more powerful, and advanced robotics. What's more, why do so many mission images seem manipulated, altered, or simply fake? There are official videos in which shadows cross in opposite directions, something impossible with a single light source, like the sun. In other footage, no stars can be seen in the space sky, not even in the most famous photos. Some iconic photos appear to have been taken in a studio with artificial lighting and static backgrounds. Coincidence? Technical error? Or something much more calculated? The space race at the height of the Cold War transformed space exploration into a true ideological dispute between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was more than science. It was propaganda, influence, power. The American victory in getting to the moon first not only consolidated the U.S.'s technological dominance over the world, but also weakened the morale of the Soviet bloc. But what few ask themselves is, how real was this? And to what extent was this staged? Recently released documents reveal inconsistencies in mission records. Internal NASA reports show communication failures, loss of original data, missing tapes, with important recordings and statements from astronauts who, upon returning to Earth, seemed hesitant with strangely practiced speeches. The agency itself has already admitted that it no longer has the original tapes of the moon landing. How can humanity's greatest achievement simply be lost? Why wasn't the most important video of all time properly preserved? In 2015, a retired NASA engineer revealed that part of the Apollo mission was recreated for record purposes. This statement went unnoticed by the mainstream media, but it raised an alarm among researchers and theorists. Recreated in what sense? Just for illustrative purposes or to hide something that never actually existed? From then on, a series of clues began to be connected. The supposed filming done in a studio, with Stanley Kubrick directing, is a theory that has gained strength over the years. Although officially denied, Kubrick himself left clues in his films. According to some analysts, that would indicate his participation in a cosmic staging. The Shining, for example, brings visual and symbolic references that many interpret as a veiled confession from the filmmaker. Coincidence or subliminal message? And it doesn't stop there. NASA's most recent missions, such as the images sent by probes on Mars, are also the subject of questioning. Many of these images present perspective errors, lighting gaps, and elements that appear to be digitally replicated. And some patterns are found on the ground that resemble studio marks, like tire tracks. The Perseverance rover, for example, has already been caught with the same image background in photos taken weeks apart, as if it were in the same location, despite claiming kilometers traveled. Why do these errors keep happening? We are talking about the largest space agency in the world, an organization with billions of dollars invested, with the best experts, with access to cutting-edge technology. And yet, grotesque inconsistencies appear frequently. This raises a legitimate question. Are we seeing reality, or just what they want us to see? Narrative manipulation is not something new. Since ancient times, empires have controlled what people see, hear, and believe. And in the case of NASA, space may have become the perfect stage to build a story where everything seems grand, impossible to question, wrapped in science and prestige. But when you look closely, the truth begins to peel away from the surface. Another factor that increases skepticism is the treatment given to astronauts. Many of them, after returning from missions, avoid interviews, show signs of psychological stress, and some have even made strange statements about what they saw in space. Buzz Aldrin, one of the first men to set foot on the moon, said in an interview that something accompanied them on the mission. Edgar Mitchell has openly declared that he believes in extraterrestrial life and that the government hides information. What exactly did these men see out there? And why did silence become the rule? Furthermore, live communication failures during space broadcasts are constant. Interrupted audio, Videos that freeze at the crucial moment, sudden cuts. The standard claim is technical problems, but is that really it? The public deserves answers, which is why videos like this are so important. You who are watching now are part of a minority that decides to see beyond. A minority that refuses to accept everything as absolute truth, that questions, investigates, analyzes. This channel exists to give voice to questions that bother you, but that need to be asked. And that's why your support here is essential. Like this video so it doesn't disappear in the algorithms. And if you're not already subscribed, sign up now, because the next revelation could be even more disturbing than anything you've seen so far. And now, I want to hear from you. Comment below. Do you think NASA has ever lied to the world? Or even was the moon really conquered? Or was it all staged? Right here. Even if you don't believe all of this, your opinion is part of this collective investigation. Because when the public starts talking, the truth starts to emerge. And it is exactly at this point that the official narrative begins to collapse. Because no matter how much NASA insists on maintaining the veneer of perfection, there are voices that have escaped from behind the scenes, voices that have seen what we have not. Voices that were inside, breathing the heavy air of the silent corridors of the most powerful space agency on the planet, and that one day decided to break the silence. One of these men is retired engineer Thomas Reynolds, a name little known outside conspiracy circles, but who for years held technical positions in sectors linked to the documentation of space missions. In an interview recorded in 1997, but which only recently went viral, Reynolds states that not all of the mission footage was taken outside Earth. He not only suggests, but firmly declares that entire scenes from the Apollo 11 mission were recorded inside an underground military base, located in the state of Nevada, under direct orders from higher authorities. According to Reynolds, the justification used internally for these scenarios was the instability of transmission equipment at the time. NASA, according to him, did not want to run the risk of a public failure with live images failing or communication problems with the astronauts. So a Plan B was created. A studio was set up with exact replicas of the lunar module, controlled lighting and a setting identical to the terrain on the moon. Everything was filmed, edited and stored as a visual backup in case the live broadcasts did not work. The problem is that, according to him, this material was not just used as a plan. This is what the world saw. This information, even though it is classified by many as a conspiracy theory, raises an alert that cannot be ignored, because it coincides with several other anomalies recorded in recordings of the time. For example, in some transmissions, it is possible to hear commands coming from mission control that do not match the expected response time of a communication made between the Earth and the Moon, considering the natural signal delay. There are also records of double shadows, lights that move at angles incompatible with the lunar sun, and even reflections from objects that appear to be spotlights. More recently, controversial video, allegedly leaked from a former NASA collaborator, shows what would be a simulation of the Earth seen from space, with a curved screen reflecting images in real time, as if it were a holographic projection to be used for indoor filming. Although the veracity of this material has never been confirmed, the similarity with certain scenes from orbital flights is unsettling. And even if you are still skeptical, it is impossible not to admit that there are, at the very least, a large number of very convenient coincidences. Another figure shrouded in mystery is Rick Houston. It's worked behind the scenes in the production of NASA broadcasts in the 1970s. In a low-budget documentary, little known outside the alternative circuits, Rick reveals that a large part of the images presented to the public were edited before they were even broadcast. This included color correction, lighting adjustment, and even inserting effects to improve the viewer's visual experience. The question he leaves in the air is direct. Why does a government agency, which should value scientific transparency, need to dramatize reality? What if this role play goes deeper than just visual tweaks? What if we are dealing with decades of carefully engineered theatrics to shape global perceptions of space, the Moon, Mars, and all exploration beyond the atmosphere? There is a growing theory which has been gaining strength in independent forums, and among alternative researchers, which points to a possible space cinema. This theory states that much of what we consume about space is a visual construction, designed to keep control of the scientific narrative in the hands of a few institutions. And guess who is at the top of this pyramid? NASA. Now imagine if the agency had the resources to create simulated content with impressive fidelity since the 1960s. What would it be capable of doing today with CGI, artificial intelligence, and deepfakes technologies? Are images from rovers on Mars, videos from space stations, and even certain transmissions from the ISS real? Or are we watching a carefully scripted spectacle while believing we are seeing science in real time? What if part of the billion-dollar budgets allocated to space exploration is being invested not only in research and development, but also in media structures, secret studios, image editing, and information control? Could this be NASA's real secret program? Not the one who explores new planets, but rather the one who manipulates what the entire world believes to be true. The idea may seem absurd at first glance. After all, it is more comfortable to believe the official version. Follow the flow of information that is delivered by the media and avoid the tortuous paths of doubt. But the truth is not usually comfortable. It requires deconstruction, analysis, courage. And videos like this exist precisely for that reason: to provoke thought, to disturb, but to ignite that spark of distrust that may have always been there inside you. Of course, many will try to discredit this type of content. They will call it a crazy theory, clickbait, misinformation. But what they don't realize, or perhaps realize too well, is that every conspiracy theory is born from a loophole. And NASA has more loopholes than any other scientific agency. How many questions are left unanswered? How many files remain confidential? How many images are not released to the public? And why? You start to put the pieces together and realize there is a pattern of concealment, a control pattern, a pattern of silence. And silence, when it comes from those who should be accountable to the public, screams louder than any evidence. Therefore, if you are following this far, it is because you are not satisfied with ready-made answers. You want to know what really goes on behind the curtains of space exploration? Want to find out what NASA is hiding? Want to understand why so many former employees, engineers, technicians, and even astronauts began to move away from the official narrative? And this is the path we are walking together. Comment below. Are you fooling us? Or even does NASA manufacture reality? Write sincerely. Your comment helps this video reach more people. And who knows, together we can make more people start to question what they are seeing. Because sometimes, questioning ... is the first step to waking up. What if the key to dismantling NASA's official narrative lay in the images they themselves released? What if the evidence was not in occult theories or secret documents, but in the recordings themselves, in historical photos, in videos celebrated as achievements of humanity? Because when we start to analyze these files with a closer eye, something strange emerges. The images that were presented to us as irrefutable proof of space exploration begin to fragment under the light of logic and detailed analysis. Let's start with one of the most iconic images of all time: the photo of astronaut Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface taken during the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. It is in textbooks, documentaries, museums, and has been used countless times as a symbol of the conquest of space. But when we zoom in on this image and look at the reflection in the helmet's visor, what we see is something unexpected. There are no stars in the sky, nothing, an absolute void, no bright spots. That, in itself, is intriguing. After all, we are talking about the moon, a place without an atmosphere, where the stars should be even more visible, without the interference of light or pollution that we have here on Earth. How is it possible for the sky to be completely black? And this is just the beginning. When comparing this image with others from the same mission, we noticed inconsistent shadows, as if there were multiple light sources, but the only source of light on the moon, theoretically, would be the sun. So why do the shadows of objects point in different directions? In one photo, the lunar module's shadow goes one way, while the astronaut's shadow goes the other. This is only possible with artificial lights, spotlights, studio lighting. It's not something that should happen in the open space of a celestial body. There are also videos where the background appears to static, as if it were a painted canvas. In one of these recordings, the astronaut moves, jumps, and the horizon remains motionless, without any depth of field. And in another moment, an American flag waves in the vacuum of the moon, where, as we know, there is no air. There is no wind. So what exactly made the flag move? There are those who say that it was the impetus for the movement of the astronauts when planting it. But even so, the continued ripple seen in the records raises more questions than it answers. Moving forward a little in time, we arrive at the Apollo 17 mission, the last manned mission to the moon. In 1972, in it, there is a photo where a strange object appears in the background, reflected in the visor of one of the astronauts. A metallic structure with lines that do not match any of the mission's official equipment. Was it an accidental reflection of something that was outside the camera's field? Or was it a part of the structure of the supposed studio, where that scene was staged? To this day, there is no convincing official explanation for this detail. Another point that intrigues researchers is the fact that many images have the same rocky background, even though they were taken in supposedly different locations on the lunar surface. It's as if the scenery had been reused. There are comparisons that clearly show the same stone formations appearing in images that are supposed to represent miles apart. This suggests the use of static sets, artificial sets, like those used in films. And we can't ignore the documents that have been leaked by hackers and former employees in recent years. One of the most talked about is an alleged internal NASA report from 1971, which mentions filming tests indoors with low-gravity simulations and manipulation of artificial lighting. This document, although not officially authenticated, contains descriptions very similar to the conditions seen in the Apollo mission videos. The most curious thing, it mysteriously disappeared from the internet days after it began circulating on forums and social media, and it's not just the past that raises suspicions. More recent missions, such as sending probes to Mars, also present questionable visual evidence. In some images officially released by the Curiosity rover, there are elements that seem too familiar. Rocks that appear in more than one photo, in different positions, as if they were repositioned props. In others, marks on the ground resemble tire tracks, and we're not talking about the tracks left by the robot's own wheels. These are wider trails incompatible with the official standard. What was there before the probe arrived? Furthermore, there are videos where we see the robot in movement on Martian soil, but the sky has a light blue tone similar to the terrestrial sky. When we know that Mars' atmosphere is thin, reddish in color, and full of dust, NASA itself even published images in which it changed the color of the sky for better viewing purposes. This raises another serious question. To what extent is what we are shown really what was recorded? And when we talk about image manipulation, we can't forget live broadcasts from the International Space Station. There are widely circulated videos where objects fly in the background of the ISS and the signal is immediately cut off. Some of these occurrences have been explained as signal interference or technical failures, but the patterns are strange. Whenever something out of the ordinary appears, be it a light, an unidentified movement, or an anomaly, in the structure of the station, the transmission fails, as if someone had their finger on the emergency button. All of this, keyed together, creates a puzzle that begins to make sense when we stop looking with the blind faith that many have in NASA and start analyzing with critical sense. Because the files are there, images are available, videos can be reviewed as many times as we want, and what they show is not compatible with the perfection they sold us. There is something wrong. And the more you analyze it, the more doubt turns into suspicion. If you've made it this far, tell me, does this all seem normal to you? Do you believe that these reflections, these shadows, these transmission failures are simple coincidences, or are we facing the greatest performance in the history of humanity? Comment below. I saw the hoax in the images, or the truth is in the details. Write down anything that has caught your attention so far, because while some prefer to close their eyes, you are going further. And that's what makes all the difference. NASA's response to all of this is always the same. They are nothing more than unfounded theories, distortions promoted by conspiracists with no scientific basis. The most famous space agency in the world guarantees that all missions were real, that the videos are authentic, that the records are legitimate, and that any visual divergence can be explained on technical grounds. For many, this answer is enough. After all, NASA is a consolidated entity financed with billions of dollars, full of renowned scientists and respected internationally. But should this indisputable authority be accepted without question? Whenever an inconsistency is pointed out, the explanation is ready, technical, and rehearsed. When talking about the absence of stars in photos of the moon, NASA says that the luminosity of the lunar soil, a reflection of sunlight, added to the configuration of the cameras used in the missions meant that the stars were not captured. When shadows are questioned in different directions, the answer comes with technical terms about irregular topography, variation in the slope of the ground, and optical distortions. These are arguments that at first glance sound plausible, but can all these visual, documentary, and narrative anomalies be technically justified without raising any suspicions? Another interesting point is the way the agency deals with leaks and statements from former employees. Instead of presenting robust counter-evidence, what we see, most of the time, is silence. The names of those who dare to speak are erased, discredited, set aside. There is no opening for public debate. There is no incentive for independent investigation. Everything is treated with an almost paternalistic tone, as if the audience were incapable of understanding the most complex aspects of the missions, and that, in itself, should already raise an alert. If NASA really has nothing to hide, why doesn't it open its files completely? Why are so many original recordings missing? Why are so many documents still classified as confidential, even after more than 50 years of lunar missions? We are talking about the mission that marked the history of humanity, the great leap for humanity, as Neil Armstrong declared. Wouldn't it be in the agency's interest to make everything accessible and transparent to reinforce its credibility? And when glitches arise in live broadcasts from the International Space Station, the official explanation remains technical problems. But these failures happen precisely when something unusual appears in the camera's field of view. Unidentified objects, strange lights, non-standard movements. The transmission is cut off almost immediately. Coincidence or damage control? What draws the most attention is NASA's behavior when faced with questions. Instead of responding with open data, encouraging debate, and welcoming legitimate doubts, the agency prefers to marginalize those who question. Sites that address these topics are labeled as sources of misinformation. Videos are demonetized. Social networks mark any post on the topic with misleading content alerts. The speech is always the same. Trust in science, trust in NASA. But blindly trusting is the same as giving up critical thinking. And we're not just talking about ordinary questioners. Independent astronomers, retired space engineers, and even former agency collaborators have already expressed their legitimate doubts. Some allege inconsistencies in orbit calculations, errors in gravity simulations, conflicting data between public and internal reports. These professionals are not lay people. These are experts who worked directly with NASA systems, and who, because they had privileged access, decided to expose what didn't seem to make sense. A recent example was a statement from a physicist associated with an atmospheric modeling project, who pointed out discrepancies in the data provided by NASA about the Martian atmosphere. According to him, the density reported in the reports did not match the observations made in real time. When this came to light, NASA did not take a public stance. Silence was the only answer. There is also the issue of military secrecy. Part of NASA's operations are coordinated in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Defense. This means that not everything that happens within the agency is subject to public audits. Missions with military involvement are automatically classified as confidential, and the population simply does not have access to them. This proximity between space exploration and military interests raises a central question. What is being done out there, in the name of science, but hidden behind national security protocols? NASA also states that it is constantly audited, that its data is available on official portals, and that anyone can consult it. But this same data is often incomplete, truncated, with codes and graphics that are indecipherable to the common public. Not to mention the images available in low resolution or treated to facilitate processing, as they claim. But how far does this treatment go? What is the limit between adjusting and manipulating? Another factor is budget. With billions of dollars being injected every year, one would expect the agency to be rigorously accountable. However, there are records of millionaire transfers to private partner companies without public details of the activities. And many of these companies have ties to visual technology, computer graphics, and 3D simulation sectors. Would this be just an administrative detail, or a key piece in understanding how the reality of the space is being constructed for the public? None of this is said to deny science or to attack serious professionals. On the contrary, the intention is precisely to raise an honest, necessary debate which refuses to swallow ready-made answers. Because believing in science is also believing in the right to question. And at this point, NASA needs to relearn how to dialogue with the public. Comment below, why so much secrecy? Or I want the files open. And if you've ever noticed any inconsistencies in NASA videos, comment exactly what it was. Your comments help this content spread and help more people. Think outside the official script. But what you might not have been expecting is this: a revelation that goes far beyond the wrong shadows, suspicious reflections, or CGI images. In 2015, a leaked document brought to light one of the most explosive allegations ever associated with the American space program: the alleged existence of a secret space studio operating inside a maximum security military base in the United States. That's right, a complex entirely dedicated to recording and simulating space missions, equipped with modular scenarios that accurately replicate the lunar surface, the interior of the International Space Station, and even Martian environments. This document, which circulated on forums like Reddit and 4chan before being mysteriously removed, described the structure of this studio in impressive technical detail. According to the attached reports, the site would be known internally as Stage 17B and would be located inside a military installation in Nevada. More precisely, close to the famous Area 51. The report mentioned the use of high-fidelity cameras, motion capture technology, low-gravity simulation with cables and counterweights, and controlled environments to replicate conditions such as solar radiation, absence of wind, and rarefied atmosphere. Details so specific that they raise a question that is impossible to ignore. Why, after all, would such a place exist, if all the images we see really come from space? But the most shocking part is yet to come. This supposed Stage 17B would not have been used just for training or image backup purposes. The document suggested that some of the live broadcasts we watched, including iconic scenes from the International Space Station, were pre-recorded in that environment. In other words, while we believed we were seeing astronauts floating in orbit, connecting with space in real time, what we could be witnessing was a rehearsed, controlled performance planned down to the smallest detail within four walls, hidden. Under military secrecy, this information, obviously, was treated as fake news by official channels. NASA has never acknowledged the existence of this type of structure. However, it is worth remembering that the Pentagon also denied Area 51 for decades, until finally admitting its existence in 2013, after years of theories and public denunciations. What else has not yet been officially admitted? Some photos of this studio, taken secretly, according to reports, also circulated. In them, you can see perfect replicas of lunar modules, American flags positioned on lunar soil, as well as giant LED panels simulating the dark background of space. One of the images shows a tractor towing a lunar module over a sandy surface, which completely contradicts the narrative that these simulations are not used for public image purposes. If these are just training sessions, why reproduce the scenario with so much visual detail? Why the need for a background with fake stars? To add more fuel to this scenario, satellite records obtained by independent researchers show unofficially listed buildings on that same base in Nevada, with giant rectangular areas similar to film production hangars, not to mention the frequent movements of trucks, generators, and large lighting equipment. We are not talking about imaginative theories. We are talking about real, physical structures, documented by those who decided to get off the couch and investigate on their own. And now you may be wondering, how could something like this be kept secret for so long? The answer lies precisely in the control of information, in the way agencies like NASA operate together with large media conglomerates and digital platforms. Whenever content like this is published, it is limited in scope, labeled as misinformation, or simply removed without clear justification. Algorithms are programmed to suppress any narrative that challenges the official version. And this is much scarier than any act. The 2015 leak was quickly hushed up, but it left a trail that cannot be erased. Several users who replicated the content reported having their profiles banned, their IPs blocked, and, in some cases, even veiled threats via email. A former digital security analyst who followed the case stated that the servers where the material was hosted were hacked and deleted in a matter of hours. The effort to silence this revelation was so great that it only confirms how delicate this issue is. And once again, we return to the same question. If there is nothing to hide, why so much effort to erase it? Why does the simple act of questioning arouse so much resistance? Why are images of Mars, the Moon, the ISS, and satellites always filtered, processed, adjusted before reaching the public? And now, faced with this possible confirmation that part of space exploration may have been produced in a studio, how can we continue to accept everything naturally? Comment below, Stage 17B, the farce stage, or just right that explains everything, if you also felt that this point connected everything that has been said so far. Your comments are the fuel for this collective investigation. And the more people comment, the further this truth can reach. If everything we've seen so far has really been staged, then we need to ask ourselves, What is the real goal behind it? Why create such a well-structured farce and sustain it for decades? The answer isn't just fake footage or secret studios. It goes much further. What is at stake here is control of the narrative. Control of what you see, what you believe, and what you will never question. From a young age, we were taught to admire NASA as a symbol of scientific truth, of human advancement, of conquering the unknown. But what if this image was constructed? Exactly so that no one doubts it. For any question to be seen as madness. The idea that we are exploring space can be very beautiful, but it can also be the perfect distraction. A smokescreen created to keep us looking at the sky, while hiding what is happening here on Earth. What if, instead of investing billions to explore other planets, they are using those resources to manipulate reality? If there really is a secret studio, like Stage 17B, if the images are processed, the audio's cut, the transmissions manipulated, what else could be hidden? What else was created just to keep you believing? It's not just about space, it's about perception. What you accept as truth without even doubting it. Because when you realize that you may have been scammed, the penny starts to drop. You begin to see the contradictions, the patterns, the silences. You start to wonder, what else are they manipulating? And that moves. It messes with our confidence, with what we believe to be real. But it also opens a door. The door of conscious doubt, of free thinking. The search for truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. And that's where transformation begins. When you stop accepting everything as absolute truth. Comment below. Now I see it differently, or write what shocked you the most so far. Share what you noticed, what made you think that your voice could be the snap someone needs to break out of the illusion. So now that you've come this far, tell me, ... Does all this still seem like a coincidence? Can you still blindly believe in everything that NASA presents as absolute truth? If every image, every recording, every official proof can contain a hidden script behind it, what else could have been manipulated? And most importantly, how far can this farce go? But look, what you saw today is just part of the puzzle. The whole is deeper than it appears. Because if there really is a structure set up to control what you see in space, then you need to ask yourself, what is being hidden from us outside of Earth? What if there is something there? Something so impactful, so dangerous to the interests of those who control the information, that it needs to be covered up at any cost. If this video impacted you, if something here made sense to you, leave a like now. This shows me that this content needs to continue. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because the next episode will make you see the moon like you've never seen it before. And of course, comment below. I want to see what they hide on the moon, or even the farce is falling apart. Write down what you felt watching it. What caught your attention the most? What made you doubt? Your every comment here strengthens this collective investigation. And the more people comment, the further this truth can reach. You are not alone in this search, and in the face of so much evidence, inconsistencies, and strategic silences, a new clue begins to gain strength behind the scenes of space conspiracies. Reports indicate something even bolder and more hidden: the possible existence of a secret military base outside of Earth, a hidden structure in orbit, far from any public radar, operating with advanced technology and purposes that have never been disclosed. This base, according to complaints from former employees and unofficial documents, does not appear in NASA records, but would be used for tests, surveillance, and even operations beyond the reach of the world's population. What is actually being done up there? Who commands? And why was this type of presence never publicly assumed? In the next video, you will understand why this theory is attracting the attention of even experts, and what may be hidden in the largest secret structure ever built in space.